Hello everyone and welcome back to Black Dahlia, and Disc 2 at the Museum of Natural History.
Come in.
Excuse me, are you Miss Strauss?
I'm Helen Strauss.
Hi, how do you do? I'm Jim Pearson from the COI. I came across your name at work, and I was hoping, I was hoping you might be able to help me.
I'd love to. That is, if I can.
Certainly some immediate awkward tension between Jim and Helen here, especially as we pretty much jumped very quickly through Disc 1. How I plan to really go about through this game, as I'm telling you 4 episodes in, is trying to be as streamlined as I can, because there is a lot of times when you can go and jump back and forth between locations for just a single piece of dialogue. I try not to do that as much as I can. Ugh. Careful now, I don't want to get dizzy again, because you can do that anytime throughout the game. But of course, being this, section in the museum, there's probably always interesting things to see. But we're here with a task at hand.
What is it exactly your father does, Helen?
Why? Didn't Mr. Penske tell you?
I'm afraid I've never met Mr. Penske.
But don't you... I'm afraid I don't understand. Didn't Mr. Penske send you?
I've replaced Mr. Penske. I found the message you left for him, and, well, I was hoping you might be able to tell me what he needed to see your father about.
He wanted my father to examine some artifacts he'd found on an investigation of his. As far as I know, they never did meet. My father was called away suddenly on business, and I didn't want to leave Mr. Penske in the lurch. That's why I volunteered to help. If I could, of course.
What is it you do here, Helen?
Well, I'm just a graduate student intern here now, but one day I'm going to run this museum, or one just like it anyway. They've got such a wonderful display of Central European artifacts from the Middle Ages. Well, that's my area of study, Central European history, and I'm sorry. I'm sure you're not interested in listening to me babble. I could just go on and on about my work.
That's okay, Professor.
My father's the professor.
And I just bet you're a chip off the old block.
Don't go too quickly, Jim. Don't worry about it. Alright, so, not a lot we can really talk to with Helen. But the main thing that we can do with Helen is really just show her a whole bunch of stuff. And if you don't have that said stuff now, you actually have to go back and get it. Specifically, what Mr. Penske was going to show Professor Strauss. Which is actually these parchment sheets and the bag of runes that we found in the lamp at the beginning of the game.
Do you suppose that these are the artifacts that Mr. Penske wanted to speak to your father about?
Why, yes, I believe they are. Mr. Penske told my father there were inscriptions on them. These are runes. Norse runes, I'm sure of it.
Norse runes?
Yes, Norse. The ancient Scandinavians, the Swedes, the Danes, the Germans. You probably know of them as Vikings. We still see many of their roots today. For example, Wednesday is a derivative of Woden's Day or Odin's Day. And then there's...
Whoa. Slow down, Professor. Are you trying to tell me that these runes are an ancient form of Germanic writing?
Yes, that's right. The runes are a sort of alphabet. Some people also use the symbols to represent words, like the Egyptian hieroglyphics.
These pieces look like they interlock somehow. Do you think you could help me figure out the order?
Sure, I'd love to.
What about these parchments here? They're the same runes, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Someone's already begun a translation of them. 9 gifts to Odin. That generally would have meant a sacrifice of some sort.
A sacrifice? What sort of sacrifice?
Well, usually a human sacrifice. The Vikings would choose 9 strong men and hang them. Sometimes they'd behead them. As often as not, it merely meant an animal sacrifice.
Go on.
Well, it's hard to tell. These sheets are just fragments. I'd need some time.
All right. I'll check back later then.
Yeah, so, especially with those two items, we're not going to get very far by ourselves, so giving them to an actual source is going to help us immeasurably. Well, the other thing we can totally do at this point is, well, head back to the bar. We still have to find that foreman because, well, the foreman hasn't shown up from what Finster said. And we actually can't go back and talk to Finster, so might as well head back to the bar and see if we can't find that foreman. In Disc 1, we're not able to find the foreman at all. You have to wait until Disc 2, so if you keep going back and forth from your office or Sullivan's office to the bar, back and forth, you'll never find him. However, this is Disc 2. This is a completely different story. Apparently Winslow is still hanging about, thinking profusely.
And now for the day's news.
I think he would have learned, but nope. But hey, we got a new person, and a new section to go to of the bar. Not only can we talk to that one guy, but we also have access to a phone over here, which definitely involves some examination.
Meanwhile, the city police have been baffled by this insidious...
Just don't like Jim pretty much talks to everybody in the bar going, ask about the foreman. Not even like a nice introduction.
Excuse me. I'm looking for a man named George Hansen. He used to be a foreman at the Finster Munitions factory. Do you know where I might be able to find him?
Who's asking?
I'm Jim Pearson from the COI. I was told he might be able to help me find...
Louis.
Louis?
This is about the creep that gave Finster that piece of paper, right?
That's right. So, you must be George.
Yeah, I'm George.
What can you tell me about this Louis? You have a last name?
As one of our own.
I suppose so, don't everybody?
American cruiser's good commander.
I don't know what it is, though.
Is Louis a friend of yours?
And he immediately ordered the
That rat, I didn't know him from Adam a few weeks ago.
How'd you meet him?
Me and some of the fellows was in here blowing our steam after payday last month. This guy Louis was in here. He starts talking, I start to feel kind of bad for him. He says he's a little down and out right now, but all he needs is some prospects, and he'll be back up on his feet again. I told him I got some pull down at the factory. Maybe I can get him in to see Mr. Finster. Maybe he can get a job.
You didn't ask him about a job, though, did he?
Nah. He gets in there and starts talking about that secret brotherhood crap. Next thing I know, Louis headed out the door, and Finster's busting his gasket. I lost my job. I lost my house, and I lost my wife, and it's all on account of that Louis.
Do you have any idea where I might be able to find this Louis now?
Oh, buddy, don't I wish. If I could find him, I'd break his lousy neck.
Do you remember anything else about him? You said you were in here with your buddies. Would any of them remember anything?
I don't know. I'll ask around, see if I can help you out. Stop back later.
Thanks, George. You've been a big help.
Nearing its breaking point, officials in Washington...
Lousy Louis.
Japan's pinch hitter on the...
I'll be talking to the boys later.
Okay, George, I'll stop back later then.
I'll have to remember that. It's kind of interesting, though, that Louis would go specifically to Finster to start preaching this Brotherhood stuff instead of to, like, regular people like George and his buddies or anybody in the bar. What would be sort of the connection between him and Finster, I wonder? Now, this phone has a lot of information on it. A lot of, kind of the similar setup of numbers, letters and numbers that the Blacklist have, except they're 6, so it's kind of an easier cipher to figure out. Now, the top right one is really the only one that we need to know, which is Lou Fielding. Remember the name Fielding? Well, it's the name that was on Marillo's book of one of the aliases. As well as there's a bunch of different numbers here. I have a feeling, and I haven't tried this yet, and I might in like a separate video, just kind of go through phone numbers to see what kind of different responses there are. Because I know that there is some special numbers. But otherwise, a lot of numbers just pretty much just do this scene right here. Just a whole bunch of nothing. And I don't blame them, like, putting in, like, all of the different numbers that you get out of the Blacklist. I can't blame them for just, like, not putting anything in them specifically. But we'll just have to remember that number for a little bit later. Maybe also the one involving sluts. Maybe. I don't know. So, we'll have to come to the bar a little bit later. Otherwise, let's check in on Helen, I guess, to see what's happening at the museum. We certainly have more things that we can certainly talk about in terms of Penske. Now, even though I come here and I'm not able to talk to her at this point, there's still some things that I can still show her in my inventory. Not really the blacklist, but, maybe the case file, because there is this Thule invitation inside of it. With all the crests around it. 12 of them.
What do you make of this?
I don't think I've ever heard of the Brotherhood of Thule before. I do seem to recall a group called the Thule Society, however. They were a secret society that became very popular with the German people after the Great War. Some people said they were a cabal of black magicians.
Black magicians? You don't really believe that, do you?
No. It's far more likely they met as an excuse to drink beer and talk about politics. They did have a great deal of influence on the German people, however. They were early proponents of German nationalism and Aryan superiority. And without the backing of the Thule Society, the Nazi Party probably would never have lasted.
Yeah, wouldn't that have been a shame? What do you make of those symbols?
These are runes, and that's their English translation beneath them. These crests are what really interests me, though. They're not the crests of traditional German aristocracy. Wait a minute.
What is it, Helen?
I know where I've seen these before.
What are you looking for?
Aha! These are the crests of an ancient sect of Germanic knights. They posed as Christian soldiers. They still continue to worship the Old Norse gods and gave human sacrifices to them.
Now, it tends repeating itself, but in terms of the information that you get in the Black Dahlia, a lot of it you really have to, like, either take a screenshot or take a picture of it or at least write something down, because looking at all of this, especially, is gonna come back in very subtle ways to bite you if you have no idea what you're actually looking at. There is a lot of crests here as well, but really the ones to pay attention to are the ones with the names stricken by order of Pope Gregory the Ninth, because all of them have to do with the Knights of the Trinity. If you remember on the specific invitation, it actually does talk about the Trinity a little bit. It's also a little bit interesting to kind of wonder why their names were stricken from the record. What could they have possibly done? Compared to the other orders, like the Teutonic Knights and the Order of the Sword and the Order of the Black Rose, all of those different ones.
Eventually, they were excommunicated by the Pope and forced into exile from Germany.
I don't get it. So, how is it you know so much about these pagan knights?
Well, I should know they're one of my father's pet projects. He's in the process of restoring a stained glass window with the crests of the officers of the sect even now.
But I don't get it. What do those knights have to do with this invitation?
Well, they're the same. The crests are the same.
So, whoever these people are, this Brotherhood of Thule, they're modeling themselves after an ancient sect of pagan knights? Here in Cleveland?
It sure seems that way.
Certainly. But given that information, we're actually able to talk to her a little bit more. But there's also something else we can show her. That piece of stationery that we got when we took a look at Marilow's book. Because at the top of it is a crest. Very similar to one that was specifically in the book.
What do you make of the crest on this letterhead?
Wait. That's funny. It's the same crest as the Sergeant at Arms.
Are you telling me that the Finster family used to be a part of this group of pagan knights?
No, not Finster, the Finster Law family. They probably Americanized it when they came to this country. Many immigrants did. Here, take a look for yourself. This book's got the crests and the family names of all the Germanic knights. The pagan knights are in here as well.
Thanks, Helen. This might come in handy.
Yeah, so he apparently is connected to the Sergeant-at-Arms, who was part of the Knights of the Trinity. He even had the coat of arms right behind him that said Finsterlaw. Well, we can always see the book at any time if you're wanting to remember what the crests were, but we can also look at that stained glass she mentioned.
Do you mind if I have a look at your father's project?
Sure, I don't see why not.
Do you mind if I examine it?
Well...
I won't do anything to get you into hot water with your father. I'll be very careful, I promise.
As long as you're careful, I guess it won't hurt anything.
What kind of look is that? Anyways, we do get into a new part of the museum area, which is Strauss's pet project area. Kind of look into a very specific kind of area here. Finland, Estonia, kind of the Central European area. Missing window shows promise. Nazi guards are unrespective. I guess that's it. Interesting. The freeze, KOT occupation. Kind of wonder how long he's been working on something like this. For Habsburg Fall. Intriguing. Now, when it comes to the stained glass, let's get a better look here. Trinity driven from Prussia. Again, always back to the Trinity Knights. So, based on what we see here, we are in the depths of a puzzle right now. And the puzzle has to do with this scrambled look of names, which actually derive from this stained glass window that Strauss was trying to complete. Now, I really haven't talked about Take-Two a whole lot, but while doing this puzzle, you'll kind of notice a little bit of things as I've sped this up dramatically. Take-Two Interactive, especially when it came to Ripper, had a very steep beginning area that was kind of not a whole lot of fun in order to complete. And that was reconstructing a 3D model of a coffee mug at the very beginning of the game. It was really annoying. And apparently, they decided to continue to work on puzzles like that because we kind of have to do the exact same thing, but this time with 4 stained glass crests here that have to do with the main 4 officers of the Knights of the Trinity. The so-called Sorcerer, the Herald, the Scribe, and the Sergeant-at-Arms. My best advice for doing this kind of puzzle, because it's going to take you a while if you're wanting to do it exactly, is start from the center of the crest and work your way outwards, because it's very, very precise about how certain pieces are going into each other. Almost to the pixel, actually, because because they can't overlap at all. If they do, they'll clink at you, and then you'll have to move it a little bit, involving a little bit of slight movement on your end. You'll learn a lot about your mouse sensitivity by doing puzzles like this. At least it's a lot easier and a lot more forgiving than the coffee mug was in Ripper. But still, you're going to be probably doing this puzzle, at least trying to do it almost perfect for between 15 to 20 minutes at most. And then we'll just slide that right in there. Perfect. Awesome. So there we go. There we have the 4 crests ready to go. I wouldn't say that this is one of the worst puzzles in the game. Far from it. We'll see what happens to the puzzles. They tend to degrade a whole lot. But this one, not too bad. I could be a little bit more specific with it, but at least with this game, it's a lot more lenient. We get the 4 names connected to each of the crests. Landulf, Molhaven, Finsterlau, and that last one, which I went by too quickly. Oh well. The one at the bottom, anyways. Fichterwald, that's the one. Anyway, those are the names that you should remember, because they're gonna be coming up, as we go through the game. Heck, Finster already came up very quickly on its own. But that's going to be it for now. We've done a huge puzzle. Next time, we're going to head back to the bar to hopefully talk with George.